Sup boys, the next boss fight in the series is the Lightblinded Vanguard, and for this fight I'll have to read a bit more than in the other videos because there's quite a lot of mechanics that we have to go through, and just because this is another council fight like many others, it is very important that you understand the mechanics because there's quite a lot of them, and if you don't know what they do, it just looks like visual clutter and it'll make the experience a lot harder. But yeah, it's a run-of-the-mill council fight with 3 bosses that have distinct abilities with slight overlaps. A lot happens, but knowing what each boss does and getting the rhythm of the fight makes this a lot easier to read and react to. Each of these 3 bosses has an ultimate ability that'll force you to do some space management and some a little bit odd tank swaps. We'll get to that. So the main thing, for when they die, just like many other council fights, if one dies, the other 2 enrages, or yeah, in this case they just get a 5% damage boost every 5 seconds until they all die. On Mythic, the bosses will take turns to be empowered by a little spirit that goes from boss to boss, and their abilities will become empowered and harder to deal with. This mechanic might be scripted, so it's a fixed set of empowerments, or it might be completely random. And in case it is random, you'll have to assign CDs to different combos of this zealous spirit instead of timings in the fight. And we'll have to see on the Mythic difficulty how it goes, but if it's scripted, it'll be a lot easier to deal with. If it's random, well, we'll see how we can deal with that later. The Blood Elf boss, this guy right here, Lightblood, he does a small raid AoE damage after a short cast. Right here is 130,000 damage, holy damage to every single person in raid. 100 yards, you cannot outrange it, and neither do you want to, so this is just a hit you have to take. Bellamy, the human boss here, marks several players, and on Mythic it is all players, with a 5-yard AoE followed by a dispellable debuff. You want to spread for this, and on normal and heroic you just want to move out of the fight and just wait for it to go off. But on Mythic you'll have to pick a spot, roughly the same spot every single time, and then you just stand still and let others move. You don't want to overlap this, so do not do the 80-80-80-80 dance here. It is illegal. You'll kill somebody else. The Draenei does a charge on her elk. It is very hard to miss, just don't stand in it. And then she gives herself a shield. Under the shield she does a cast that has to be kicked after the shield is removed. This does a lot of damage, so it is a 300k holy damage to all players and a 10-second disorientate. This is high priority, and therefore you want abilities that does more damage to shields, like warriors having their wrecking throw, so it's nice to have those here. Shortly after she does this, she will cast Tyr's Wrath, which is a healer check. It is a channeling of Heal Absorb that stacks on the nearest 5 players every 3 seconds of 600,000 damage. This is huge, and every 3 seconds it is going to be hard to remove it, so you want to assign 2 to 3 groups of 5 people to swap being the closest to the boss to avoid this effect stacking on too many people. What you can do is you have one group here, group 1, with a healer and a few DPS, melee DPS, so 4 DPS and 1 healer, that takes the first stack or 2 stacks if you can handle it, and then they're gonna swap with a Warlock Gate with Team 2, which is a range heavy and 1 healer group that goes in. So when the swap is called, both of these groups will move at the same time, so they swap positions. If 2 stacks is more than the group can take, so you only have to take 1 stack per group, you might want to make a 3rd group that does the same thing. Also portals in, while group 2 then moves out on their own because of the gate cooldown. You do not want the tanks to be part of this, because this often overlaps with some of the tank busters, and that heal absorb is going to be too much for them to handle then. So assign groups, and as soon as they move out with the heal absorb, you might want to use a health stone. The Blood Elf one of his abilities is Divine Storm, which is an unavoidable damage from melee if they're on him, because it's within 8 yards. You can avoid it, but you don't really want to, or it might not be necessary. And on Mythic, this also creates these little vortexes that was going to move around, and if you're hit, you're slowed, and you take a big chunk of damage. So dodge these, and if you want to or need to, you can also avoid the damage by moving away. It does come out pretty fast, so you have to know in advance when it's coming out. Just a heads up for that. The tank swaps are the same for the human and the Blood Elf. The Draenei doesn't do a tank mechanic per se, so it's only the human and Blood Elf you have to worry about, and they have a little bit of a special tank buster. Now, it's identical as they both use this Judgment ability right here. That's a big hit, followed by a 500% increased damage from the next ability in the combo. For the human, it's Righteous Shield, and the Blood Elf has his own thing. What you can do, since it's only 5 seconds, is that you can have both tanks just hold the same boss for the entire encounter. So you have a human tank and you have a Blood Elf tank. And what they do is they put their focus target on the other one and makes a macro for taunting their focus target. So as soon as the Judgment comes out, for example, on from the human boss, uses Judgment on the human tank, the Blood Elf tank is gonna taunt her, so she uses her other ability, the Shield of Righteousness, on the Blood Elf tank, so you disperse the damage. Because it's only 5 seconds and not like 30 or 40 seconds, the aggro will slowly fall off the other tank and go back to the human tank, just because the human tank is always on the human and will slowly regain a threat to take aggro back. So you don't really have to swap target at any time, it's just a matter of taunting for a little while the cast of Judgment comes out, and then you're gonna regain the aggro afterwards naturally. This will probably make it easier to also move around, and you'll avoid missing your taunt or fucking up the swap here and there. So I would recommend this. The human's ultimate ability is Aura of Devotion, which is a damage taken decrease for all allies, or the other 2 bosses, within this zone here. After this cast finishes, after the 25 seconds here, she also consecrates the ground, and this is now an area denial here. The thing is that whenever the bosses do the ultimate abilities, they cannot be moved while they channel, so one tank will have to place the human boss away from the group, wait for her to start casting, and then go back to the group again. After this, she will also do this Divine Toll, which are projectiles that you have to avoid, or you'll get silenced for 6 seconds. Note that bosses can get Divine Shields throughout this fight, and before they use their ults, they can all get them, but as soon as they use their ults, they have this debuff for Barons for 2.5 minutes where they cannot get Divine Shield. You want to know when the Divine Shields are coming out so you don't waste your CDs on a boss that's about to be immune. Searing Radiance is for the Draenei boss up here to do, which is a cast of a long raid AoE for healers to enjoy for 15 seconds. On Mythic, as you can see here in the text, the empowered version of this ability ramps up the damage every second to a potential total of 40k per second. So 10% every 1 second for 15 seconds, and that's 150%. That's about 40k. A DK like Zone or Evoker Zephyr plus some healer CDs might really help with this and make it a non-issue. But with some other overlaps and stuff, you really want to make sure this doesn't slowly kill people or put them in at half health so they can get killed by another mechanic. The Blood Elf's ultimate ability, actually no, it's not the ultimate ability, sorry. He casts Executioner's Sentence every once in a while, which is a soakable AoE one-shot unless 4 to 5 players soak the damage with defensives. It is a big hit of 1.7 million holy damage within 8 yards, so you have to soak it to survive this. Another note for this is that the execution sentence is increased by 500% for 5 seconds after the initial cast, so you cannot stack these on top of the same player. So not all these marked players here can't stack on top of each other, they'll just kill everybody, because that's 2000% increased damage, right? So you have to not overlap. You want to assign teams of around 4 groups of 5 players, so 1 group for each of the marked players. And you stack on the marked player, who makes a square shape with the other marked, so you just stay close to each other. Maybe not this much overlap, but like close to overlapping. And then you just want to handle it. You can do it with world markers, but I don't think it's necessary. You want the world markers for the consecrations with the movement section later on. He also spawns these little hammers that's going to spawn around the marked players, so you have to avoid. The Blood Elf's ability, his ultimate ability, is the Aura of Wrath, which is a 100% increased holy damage done for other bosses within 40 yards for 15 seconds. So what you want to do is have the raid over here. The Blood Elf tank moves him over to the next, the old consecration, and waits for him to cast this. You want to move way ahead of this, so as soon as he gets close to ulting, you want to move him out of the way, wait for him to cast, then move back to the other group. He also does the consecration afterwards. And the last ultimate we're going to go over is Aura of Peace from the Draenei, which is a 25-second cast protecting other bosses within 40 yards and pacifying any player who does direct damage to them for 5 seconds. So as soon as this aura comes out, you cannot directly damage the other bosses, or you will get pacified for 5 seconds. So this is another boss. You can either have one tank taunt her, move her out, or how the actual thing is handled is that when she kneels down in the fight, you have, I think it's 5 or 6 seconds to move away. I think it is way easier to just wait for her to move, so you place the entire raid next to the old consecration, waits for her to kneel, and then move quickly away with a stampede or a portal. She also consecrates, and then these 3 abilities just keep repeating. For the movement, I recommend this map here. Just at every single little ornament here, you have 1 world marker. And what you want to do is, when it's either the human or blood elf boss to ult next, you want the raid to be 1 world marker ahead, so only the tank has to move. So in this case, the human boss would be with the raid here, and as soon as she gets close to ulting, the tank will move her 1 world marker back to the old consecration, so that the entire raid doesn't have to move. Wait for her to start casting or channeling her aura, then the tank moves back, and she will come back as soon as she's done. For the Draenei, as mentioned, you just want to stay close to the old consecration and then have the raid move, because that's easier to handle than the other 2s. Because she will kneel down way longer and give you more time to move than the other 2 bosses. So what you want to do when she ults, you want to move 2 world markers ahead, so you have the next one ready for the Blood Elf or the human. On Mythic, and here it becomes a little harder, because you have to, well, you'll see in a second. On Mythic, each boss, when they have the spirit empowered on them, they will do a combination of abilities, as you can see here. They each have a little text block here that does a combo with the other boss's abilities on top of their own, while preparing for an empowered version of their own. It goes as follows. For the empowered Blood Elf, he does the execution sentence with the divine toll. So that's a soakable one-shot with spinning AoE hammers with silence projectiles, which is the divine toll that silences for 6 seconds, followed by an unavoidable damage for melee with slowing on-hit vortexes. You can see how much this is. So these 2 abilities first, the one-shot soak and the silences, followed up with the divine storm. That's the Blood Elf. For the human, she does the Tear's Wrath with the Divine Toll, followed up by Avenger's Shield. So first, a ramping AoE heal, that's the Tear's Wrath, the one where you have to get the shield off, the Absolve Shield, where you have the teams that have to swap, plus the Silence projectiles from Divine Toll, followed up by a all-player targeted by a 5-yard AoE that you should dispel afterwards. It should be dispellable, this dot afterwards. Also a lot, but it should be manageable. And for the Draenei, which I think is probably the worst one, she does the Executioner's Hammer, or Sentence, sorry, Executioner's Sentence with the Tear's Wrath, the Absolve Shield, and then follows it up with the Searing Radiance, the ramping rated damage, which is empowered in this state here. So the huge heal absorb on top of a soakable one-shot with the AoE spitting hammers, followed up by this ramping AoE heal check. Here is the testing footage from the heroic dungeon, not the heroic dungeon, the heroic version of the raid. You'll see the Draenei casting Exorcism, which is just her basic attacks, more or less. Sacred Toll comes out, just raid damage, can't really avoid it. This is the Avenger's Shield. 4 people are marked with the AoE damage here. You want to move out, then stand still before the cast comes out, so people can move away from you. After it comes out, gives you a little dot that can be dispelled. Sacred Toll once more. Just damage, can't avoid it. And here comes the first tank combination. And here you can see the human boss over here is already ready in place to ult, and the Blood Elf is over here. In this case, you would want to do the actual swap, because you'll see the tank's HP over here. It's gonna get, well, they're gonna take a fair hit here. Right there, he goes from 100% to 34%, probably with defensives. You want to avoid this big hit, so you should do the swap there. But right after the first tank buster from the Blood Elf, the human is going to kneel down and start casting her ult. The ring here is the aura's range, and you want the bosses out. This is not the worst one to have the bosses in, but still move out. These shields are the silencing shields. Just avoid them and you'll be fine. And right now the Draenei is casting the Searing Radiance, the ramping. If she's empowered, it's the ramping AoE. On heroic, it's just damage. You can deal with it pretty easy. Divine Storm comes out. Doesn't really do anything visually. You can see it again. Ooh. Up here, 3, 2, 1. Does a little hit. Can't really see it. On Mythic, it would summon the vortexes you have to avoid. The human boss now consecrates. And here you should move a little bit more. Because next it's going to be the Blood Elf that's going to ult. You can see it right here in 10 seconds. Sacred Shield comes out. This is the elk that's going to charge, add a shield, and then does a cast underneath that you have to kick. As soon as this ends, or right after, you will get the Executioner's Sentence, the one shot that you have to soak. You want to make a little square close to each other. You go in your soak and handle it as best as you can. On heroic here you only have 3, but on mythic you might have 4. Now this person died because he took too much damage because not enough people soaked. And you can see the hammers spinning around afterwards. He's gonna get a rest in a second, so we'll see the rest of the fight. In 12 seconds you'll see the Draenei start kneeling down and you'll see how much time you have to move. In 5 seconds you want her close to the old consecration, which is correct. And now she's gonna kneel down And you have this entire cast bar to move away from her. Now the aura comes out. Any direct damage in this aura will pacify you. And she'll stand still over here for 25 seconds. Here you'll have the first combo where they actually line up with their tank busters. First the human and then the blood elf. Here you want to swap after the judgment. And quickly again swap over from the blood elf as well. More Ventus Shield. More Divine Tolls. So as you can see, a lot is happening, but as soon as you know the rhythm of the fight, it's not that bad. The tanks should only focus on placing the tanks, not the tanks, the bosses, pre-positioning them before their ult comes out, and manage the tank buster. The DPS should always focus the shield to kick the cast, or else it's a wipe, and the healers just have to know when the Searing Rend comes out, and when the execution sentence comes out, so you can do some rate damage reduction. Now there is probably a scripted repeating combo for the entire fight. It is very hard to see without having done the fight and having known the flow of it. But there probably is a set timer for every single mechanic, so it isn't completely random. At least it should be. So as soon as you get the entire rotation down, this shouldn't really be that bad. We already gotten back to the human ulting, so we've already done a full rotation. But the rotations are extremely long, and there's a lot of stuff happening, and there's a lot of overlaps. You'll just have to handle it as you go along. But dodging and knowing what the different little circles do, and being very aware of how much energy the bosses have is the main thing here. Moving ahead so you give your raid more time. All these small things will make this fight very, very doable. But definitely challenging on Mythic with the empowered abilities. Next, the Blood Elf ults, the tank moves him back like he should, so the entire raid doesn't have to move, at least not as much. And you have an overlap with the executioner sentence here. Nobody dies, all fine, probably defensive. More shields. Now you see people move a bit too much for these shields, so these little AoEs. You don't want to move too much. Break the shield, do the kick, and so on and so on and so on. Right, I think you get the idea, and thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.